Good evening and welcome to the Robin Gould Show. I'm Dr. Robin Gould. I'm so glad that you're here. Thank you for joining me. I appreciate your time. I appreciate you spending this evening with me. Well, I'm in Florida, so it's evening for me. I don't know where you are or what it is, but welcome. I'm so glad you're here. And as I always say, whatever you've been going through today, whatever's been hard for you or difficult, I know we're in a trying time in the United States of America right now, but the future begins now. And I would like to be a voice of encouragement today to all people. And I want to introduce some concepts that might challenge you a little bit. So the future begins now, and thus we shall start. So welcome, and I'm glad you're here. So I wear this necklace very often, and I've worn it on this program before, but it's the Shema, which is, Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. And this is what we pray. And we do this 3 times a day or even more to remember that we worship one God and he is enough for us. And having one God is an amazingly beautiful journey that we are continuing to get to know our God. And in other faith cultures, they had many gods and all kinds of different things, and all things that's very interesting to learn about the way different people live their lives. But we have one God, and he is very good at being one. And in all the ways that he shows up, he is so incredible and perfect. We are always not that good at being one with each other. And so that's what we are seeing now. And I would love to just sort of bypass the politics of things that are happening right now, because I feel like relationships are so much more important. And I want to focus on that. So I'm going to go to the chat real quick to turn it on. Sorry about my ring light. You're going to see it just for a minute. But I would like to put on the chat. Oh, Barb, hi. And Ellen. Oh, I'm so glad to see you. You've already made my night. I already have my support system here. So I just want to talk to you. And I'm so particularly happy to see you, Barb, because I think I'm going to share things that you have definitely even been a great mentor to me for. So one of the things that is really powerful us as people, Bible believing believers, is to kind of wrap not just our hearts, because we can get frenzied in the heart, but even our heads around how complicated relationships can be. And to not just be terrified of complicated relationships, but understand that we are given the Bible, which is full of complicated relationships. And if we're really honest with ourselves, the Bible pushes the envelope on complicated relationships. And it can be very challenging for us to read the Bible and read some of the things that we come across. I mean, I know we don't always even like to admit that to ourselves, that this book pushes us beyond our limits in terms of conformity or ideas or the way things are supposed to be. Because we're used to things coming together and wrapping up neatly. The Bible's not that book. It's a perfect book. But within that perfection that our one and only true God gives us, there's 1,000 billion things we don't understand, and it is beyond us. I don't want that to hurt you or scare you. I want that to comfort you, that his ways are higher than our ways, which means he's enough to meet our needs because he knows more than we do. And so I wanted to mention something about today's Torah portion and go into it a little bit and kind of put this together with an encouraging word to you for the circle you have, which I hope the circle that you have is a mixture of all different types of people. I really hope that is your life, that you have various types of people that you interact with and love and know and are related to. And even in our own families, our faith, our beliefs, our priorities, they can shift and be different. And we can still absolutely love and respect each other and even find each other. So I would love to really I do understand right now, as we're going through a contested election, with all kinds of things. And I do absolutely believe everybody deserves a voice and to be heard, and their voice matter and their vote matter and everything that's happening. But within the scope of all of these scales and balances, and it is important to have things be fair, I would love us to have a bigger picture as well with our relationships and with our witness and not just our witness. That sounds so fake. Like who we are as people, not just our witness, not just our outline, but us. And so I want to talk a little bit about the portion, and I want to tie this in. So here we go, because I know there's a lot of negativity going around. And I'm going to tell you something. Negativity is unavoidable on some level on this planet. I mean, we're not Pollyanna minded that we always think we can avoid everything that's negative. We can't. And we shouldn't be the ones that are totally avoiding it, because we need to wade in and try to be the peacemakers. It's very difficult to tease apart what does peace look like. And I don't have the answer, but I have some ideas that can help us maybe in our day-to-day or hour-to-hour thinking, or the way we treat others, or the way that we act, that can, after a while, just lead us to the right path, because we did what we could do that minute, that hour, that morning, that afternoon, that day. Okay, so I don't have all the answers, nor do you. No one does. No human does. But accumulatively, we can make loving, good decisions, and it can lead us to where we need to be. And we don't need more light than that little step our foot is on at that point. Because we don't need to run up the stairs. We can just wait and see how things play out, and just pause and back off, and let's see what's going to happen. Okay. So I know that's a de-escalation of a lot of frenzied emotion, which can be really hard to do, but we can do it. And so if you know my name, Robin Gould, you might know I write Becky books. I'm one of the authors. And just in case you're wondering or new to the program, and one of my books is called Colossal Controversies. And I want to talk about a controversy in this book with the portion. And I just want to make a few other points here. But I want to focus today on, well, actually, I'll let me mention the book real quick, because it's going to lead me into this portion. So Controversial Controversies is actually addressing one of the arguments against us keeping the dietary laws, which from my perspective as an attachment specialist would be very hurtful, that some people would feel like the Father would say, eat unclean to a certain group of people and eat clean, you people, you're better, you mean more to me, right? Because I never see the law as a burden or a flaw or something to yoke people with, but a parent parenting their children. So it's always very important to me for that reason, to help people understand, particularly Christians, that the Torah is for them. But in this book, we talk about let no man judge you in eating or drinking in regard to a holy day. And then it was when we talk about in eating and drinking. So the book is an apologist argument for pro-Torah about, that isn't even what it's talking about. It's talking about fasting, and it's talking about asceticism. Asceticism is where we suffer intentionally, thinking this pleases God. And this leads me into my point today. And get the book, because I think you'll like it. Shalom, listening. Hi, Bob. Oh, good to see you. We're talking about controversial, complicated things. Okay. So asceticism is the belief that holiness is attained through self-torture, self-suffering, affliction, right? And the ascetic, the Colossians were like asceticists, however that's called. It's asceticism, but ascetis, I don't know. But anyway, they thought that they would achieve holiness and please their little g gods before they found the one true God, right? They actually would, like sit on a bed of nails or like fast till they were sick and like emaciated, thinking that, and maybe, and the little g gods that weren't really gods, but that pleased them, right? That's not our God. He's not saying the way I love you best is when you hate yourself the most. That isn't what he's saying. We have Yom Kippur for sure, our day of affliction, where we afflict ourselves. And you know what? I'm going to tell you something. People go to CrossFit and they think the Bible's mean. Okay, no. But the day of affliction ends with a full bankruptcy of all your debts cleared full by God. That is an affliction I'm on board with because it's all team human to help humans, right? Because God loves humans, period. All of them. And so our day of affliction on Yom Kippur is where we fast and we suppress the human flesh part, the false part, the comfort-seeking part, which isn't completely false. It's just a lower level of us, the beast animal level of us, to rise that spirit up to get in touch. This is a good thing. And I do a whole show on Yom Kippur, so check that out. But anyway, things are really, really complicated right now with relationships. And we're seeing this, right? And this goes into the portion. But this was happening even in this book. And I want you to read this. And you know what? This is a thin book. And Valerie Moody says, it's a great book. It's a protein with no sides. And she's right, because I just make the point and I don't go on and on. But we in a scholarly way, we present this material. So it's a quick read, or I think it's a quick read. But in today's Torah portion, which I'm going to tie in with everything I'm saying, is it's Genesis 23, 1, and I think it goes through 25, 18. So anyway, that's the Torah portion. And it's talking about Abraham and Sarah and Isaac. Okay. I'm not going to use hyperbole here, but what a complicated situation that family was. Okay. The family that founded everything, the founding family, what a complicated family of relationships, right? Well, Eliezer's mission here in this part that I want to talk about in the Torah portion, and it's of course much longer and you can read it. Let's go into it a little bit. Okay, so Abraham was old and come along in days. Now, the sages believe this means that he used all his days well, and they had accumulated into this rich existence, right? Older people are very, very valuable. They know things you don't know. They've been through things you've not been through if you're younger. I will really want to make sure that we get this picture that ageism has no place in a society that loves the Bible. Ageism is wrong in terms of devaluing our elderly population. These are important people with hearts and brains and ideas that plow through so many of the problems that we have. And so remember that, okay? So he's old, he's incredible, and God had blessed Abraham in all things. So in this part of the portion, they need to get a wife for Isaac. And so remember Isaac, how complicated is that? Of course he was an adult, drag your willing son, because he was willing, up, Mount Moriah and present him, as an offering. And of course, I believe personally, Abraham looked into the future. He lifted his eyes after 3 days and he saw what he needed to see to know. I believe Abraham knew even if Isaac had died, he would have, since through Isaac would come the rest of, Israel would come out of that. But does that matter? Yes, because it's complicated. Here's why it's complicated. Because the binding of Isaac means that there'd be a human sacrifice that God doesn't allow. Okay, we're already wading through the weeds. It's really complicated. Now, but I think that's why the Bible goes out of its way to say the 3 days and Abraham lifting his eyes, to show you God was never going to ever accept a human sacrifice. And I think Abraham knew that, because there would be no sacrifice. There would be either a resurrection or a cessation of that activity, which ended up happening when that angel said, stop. Okay, that's how I see it. Not because I need to make myself feel better, but because that's what fits in the text from my perspective. So Abraham has his right-hand man, Eliezer, who was, the eldest servant of his house, who ruled over all that he had. So he was very trusted. And now Sarah had died. And of course you can, go and read about, I've been to where, that the grave is. I mean, it's really interesting. There's so much we could really talk about today, but there's so much to cover. We're just going to cover this part. But he says to him, and he says, swear by the Lord, God of heaven and God of the earth. So interesting. God of the heaven and God of the earth. So that's one God, right? In heavenly and earthly places. He's the God. His territory is this earth. He's the God over, and he's the God in the heavens. And that you will not take a wife for my son of the daughters of the Canaanites, of whom I dwell, but you shall go to my country and take to my kindred and take a wife for my son Isaac. So from a certain particular population, get my son a bride. I trust you to go get her. It's interesting because it makes Isaac look, I'm not going to say it makes Isaac look a certain way, but from our cultural perspective, we might look at that and go, can Isaac not get his own wife? And is the woman he's just going to take okay with this? But when you look at this from a cultural perspective, that would be a high honor this woman would probably want. And your father's trusted servant to find you a bride for the purpose of a marriage that might have a different foundational understanding than our cultural understanding of marriage now, right? That's okay. But get into that culture with me. If you've ever been to the desert, the Negev desert where I have been, you get a different feeling when you're there. Israel is different. Israel is complicated. You earn Israel. You pay for it. You pay for it in discomfort. And you also get the best, most beautiful experience. But it's complicated. Okay. You're going to hear me say it's complicated thousands of times today. Let me see. Okay. Say anything you want, Barb, because you and I have spent many moments enjoying that wilderness. Okay. The servant took 10 camels of the camels of his master and departed. Now, there's so many teachings on why it's 10, what they stand for. It's so exciting. Please go and learn that. I think Rico has one. I wish I could remember. Anyway, all the goods of his masters were in his hand. He arose and he goes to the city of Abraham's brother Nachar, right? So that would be an area where he would know someone. So this person that he's going to get, is a very important person. She is going to be the second matriarch of Israel, because Sarah was the first. And so this is what Eliezer does, right? He actually has his camels kneel down outside of the city by this well, right, like at twilight or evening, at the time of the day that the women would go out to get water from the well, right? Because that was just kind of the culture. And he's praying and he says, O Lord, the God of my master Abraham, behold, I stand here by the well of water, and the daughters of the men of the city come out to draw the water. Let it come to pass that the maiden to whom I shall say, please dip down your pitcher that I may drink. And she shall say, drink, and I will give your camels to drink as well. She is the one you have appointed for your servant Isaac. So he's very specific about, obviously, this is a very important choice to make. So I'm going to give you very specific criterion that she would meet, that I would know this is who you sent. Now, this is not a person ordering God around. This is a person acknowledging the importance of their task, and that they need to know that they know that they know that they are bringing back the right woman that God chose and not the one that he chose. The motive behind this was, he says, I don't know, you know. And if you sent me, I want to honor you, God. He's not bossing anybody around. Let me see what Barbara's saying. My favorite story. Love how Eliezer lets the father know how he wants him to communicate with him. He talks to us each in different ways. That's so right, Barbara. And I love that. And I just know Barbara well, so I know that she lives this way and gets this, because exactly, he's saying, this is how I'll know. This is his fleece, if you will, so that he doesn't make a mistake for something this important. This is an important family. Now, everybody's important, but from a national foundational perspective of leadership and authority, this family, right? So now things kind of go quicker. Before he had finished speaking, Rebecca shows up. She came out with her pitcher upon her shoulder. The girl was very fair to look upon. So the servant ran to meet her and said, please let me drink a little water from your pitcher. And she says, drink, my lord. And she hastened and let down her pitcher upon her hand and gave him to drink. When she had done giving him to drink, she said, I will draw water for your camels also until they have finished drinking. 10 camels. Can you imagine? I'll feed your entire 10 camels way out here where it's dry with this well, and I have a thing on my shoulder, and I'm a woman. Okay. That's a very special woman. She hastened and emptied her pitcher into the trough and ran again to the well to draw water and drew for all his camels. All right, interview passed, except he looks at her wonderingly, but he kept his peace, waiting to know whether or not God had made his journey successful or not. Because he had to see, there's still a criterion, right? That she would be from Abraham, he says, from my kindred, right? So from Abraham's family, far enough removed for it to be allowed. But he's, that's pretty amazing that she did exactly as he prayed. So there's a pretty big clue, right? Because, and what does he do? He says upon that event, he gives her a gold ring of 1/2 shekel's weight and 2 bracelets for her hands of 10 shekels, weight of gold. This can look like a betrothing to Isaac, because there's that exchange there, or that gift there. So that gives you a clue, right? That this is probably her. And then after he hands this over, kind of as an act of faith, that like, well, you've shown up a lot, God. I'm going to put my own little faith in there, my opinion. I'm giving you my commentary. And he asks her, whose daughter are you? Tell me, please, is there room in your father's house for us to lodge? So he's kind of like, hey, I'd like to stay with you. What's your family's name again? Right? But really, he's really wanting to know who she is. And she says that she is the daughter of Bethuel, the son of Milcah, whom she bore to Nahor. Right? So there you go. So this was the granddaughter of Abraham's brother. So that's in the kindred, right? That's in his kindred. So that would work. And there, okay, and Barbara says, and there's a greater example of service than Rebecca, such hard work, voluntarily running back and forth to the well. I know. Like, talk about put your money where your mouth is. Like, I don't know you, stranger, but I'm going to feed your 10 enormous water storing animals with my pail. Yes, Barbara, I'm with you. I've always thought that was amazing. People glaze over that, but it's like, do you know what Rebecca did? That was, we don't even like to lug up one flight of stairs or one thing of groceries, Anyway, that's amazing. So then she says, she says to Eliezer, she says, we have both straw and provender enough and room to lodge in. So she runs home, and Eliezer and his 10 camels follow. They've had all the water they need, so they're all ready to go. And there he is greeted by Rebekah's brother, Laban, who provides feed for his camels and water for him and his camel. So they're really nourishing, right? And then they also even wash their feet. So there was set food before him to eat, but he said, I will not eat until I have told of my errand. So he's like, now that I'm here, I've given her this stuff, I'm going to come clean with what I want. Is it from them or to give them? Yes. Okay. And he said, speak. And he said, I am Abraham's servant. God has blessed my master greatly. He has given him flocks, herds, silver, gold, manservants, maidservants, camels, and donkeys. Sarah, my master's wife, bore a son to my master when she was old, and to him he has given all that he has. So there you go. You're getting even a repetition of this in the prayer, which was that test. But this time, the response here is, the thing comes from God. We cannot speak to you good or bad. Behold, Rebekah is before you. Take her and go, and let her be your master's son's wife, as God has spoken. But the mother, Rebekah's mother, is interesting. She isn't sure about this. So she says there are many arrangements to be made, a trousseau to be prepared. Let the girl stay with us a year or 10 months. After that, she shall go. So I don't know what that is supposed to stand for, except it could be as easy as a mother is like, oh, my baby, I don't know. If this was a culture where that kind of an offer would be strongly leapt upon. But what's interesting is Eliezer, however, insists that they must go. Like, God has spoken, we're going. And he says, do not delay me, seeing that God has made my way successful. Send me away that I may go to my master. Let me complete my task. And they said, which is interesting. And this gives you a more of a idea of God. We will call the girl and inquire at her mouth. What does she want? So for all the people that think the Bible is nothing but a misogynist book, it isn't. And this is one of the examples. So they call Rebekah and they say to her, do you want to go with this man? And she says, I will go. And so Rebekah and her maids arose. They ride upon the camels and they followed the man. And the servant took Rebekah and went his way. Isaac went out to meditate in the field at the evening time, and lifted up his eyes, and behold, camels were coming. This is a saying I say to myself sometimes when I'm waiting for something that I've prayed about. And so he goes out to the field to meditate, and behold, he lifts up his eyes, which means looking into the spiritual world, I think. And behold, camels were coming. He couldn't see Rebekah, but the camels were coming. So that's a kind of like for us, right? So sometimes you could say that to yourself. You're waiting for something. You're not sure what the answer is going to be. You don't know what the outcome is, if you know what I mean. But behold, camels are coming. They're in the distance. They're walking toward you. Be open. Trust that your Father sent his right-hand man to accomplish a task. Rebekah lifted up her eyes and saw Isaac. And to me, that means match made in heaven, so to speak. Exactly, literally and figuratively. And she leaned down from the camel. And she said to the servant, who is this man who walks in the field to meet us? And I love that picture, because you think of God walking to meet you, right? Yeshua. And the servant says, it's my master. Because he comes to her, right? She's approaching. She took a veil and covered herself, which to me is she's becoming a bride. And then Isaac brings her into the tent of his mother Sarah because she would become that second matriarch. He took Rebekah and she became his wife, and he loved her. And Isaac was comforted after his mother had died. Okay. So I think this is really interesting because I've read commentary where they talk about how sometimes in relationships, you go to them, and sometimes in relationships, they go to you. That is a truth that we know. Now, in this case, we see Isaac, right? His wife came to him, but he had made the journey to the field unknowingly to meditate, to be still. That's a message. Go to the field and get still. Lift up your eyes, and behold, you'll see the camels coming. And Jacob, of course, goes and doesn't even get his first try with Rachel, and works after a 7-year indentured servitude. He does it again. He serves another 7 years. So he worked and went and pursued and got her. There's no wrong way. There's just the way. And so this is an interesting way to look at, where we find out that Isaac had gone and settled in the Negev, the desert, where I've been in love. But if you recall from earlier in Genesis, I just want to pull this in because this is my message, okay? Just want to pull this point in, that this area was the well of he who sees me. The word there is Bir Lahai Roy. And it's roughly translated as the well of he who sees me. I'm trying to think of where I got this commentary. This is the place that Hagar had retreated to after Sarah cast her out. That's where Isaac had gone to find comfort after Sarah had died, and after his father had tried to kill him. Right? Okay. So here we go. The Bible's pushing the envelope to these complicated relationships. I'm going to tell you something. The Bible is, if it's anything, it's full of complicated relationships. And we do try to look at things from a Hollywood perspective many, many times, because the way the movies are put together is the people sit around a table writing a script, and they're like, now what do the people need to see? They're gonna crave this tension, and then they're going to crave a resolution to this tension. We don't want to leave them empty. Okay. And they know what people want, and they know what people are going to spend money on. But that wasn't the way. I do not think that was the way the Bible's written, right? And I often say it's a good thing Abraham didn't have a Bible because he wouldn't have even known, that he was doing the right thing as he did the things he did. Here we are. Barb, she says, and is there a greater example of service than Rebekah? Oh yeah, you did that. I read you, but that excellent point. It was worth repeating. And then I am going to go on here with the point I'm going to make about difficult relationships in the Bible. Okay. So let's just take a few relationships in the Bible that are complicated, and let's just face it. Let's just look at it for what it is. Now, because our cultural experience is so different from that of the Bible, we don't really see it. And that's okay. You're not expected to understand all these different culturalities. I guess I could invent that word. Let's make that a word. Maybe it is a word. But let's look at even just David and Saul. Okay. I have been to Engedi. I've climbed up there. I've been at David's waterfall. And, this is the place where he was hiding out because Saul, we just talked about him a couple weeks ago, and about he slays Goliath and Saul rewards him. And of course, when Saul has that distressing spirit, David's playing the lyre to soothe him. But that relationship gets complicated because they get competitive. They're competitive, right? They're competing. There's jealousy and there's angst. And David's just perplexed. He's also best friends with Jonathan, Jonathan's the son of Saul. And of course, even when Saul dies, David laments and is horrified. And it, talks about Jonathan and Saul soaring like eagles. So that's complicated. That's a really complicated situation. And relationships are complicated. And right now, relationships are probably more complicated than ever because in our climate today, right now in the United States, we are in a religious war of sorts because there's faith systems on these different sides with these politicians that have very different value systems. Not completely different in every way, but there is enough of a difference that you can say there are really enough elements to it to say that's kind of like a holy war in a way. But if we look at the people in the Bible that had these complex relationships, I'll mention a couple more before I get to the point I'm going to make here. And so you have Joseph and Judah, right? So you have, oh, that's complicated. Here's Joseph, Rachel's the favorite wife. Oh, that's complicated. And then Joseph, the son who had the dream, and then they throw him in a pit and he gets sold into slavery and sent to Egypt. And then Judah, right, that has part of the birthright. He is the one that ends up standing instead of Benjamin for the sake of the father. So the way I always like to explain that relationship and how it resolved itself, it didn't resolve itself. These men resolved it. Joseph, when Judah showed up and he showed Joseph that he loved his father, Jacob, more than he hated his brother and was jealous, it's like it brought out the best in Joseph. And I think Joseph was already getting there too, because he was already sitting them at the table and feeding them. And he was getting there because he had been blessed immeasurably, ruling the whole world. And he had saved the world with, interpreting Pharaoh's dream. So, but that's a complicated relationship that took work. These two brothers had different mothers. And it's a big deal because even the house is separated and that division remains. And so these men had to resolve massive differences. And then you have Esther. Let's talk about Esther just for a second. That's a complicated book. I mean, it is to me. I love complicated. I'm a therapist, okay? So I'm a marriage and family therapist. If I don't see complicated each day, I haven't even worked, okay? Things are complicated. Esther. So you have this Babylonian situation, and she wants his favor. It doesn't actually technically say she wants it, but she does say, if I have found favor in your eyes. And he's not summoned her for a while. And she is like, do you understand this? She's taken in captivity, marries the king, and wants favor. And he hasn't even called her into his chambers for a period of time that was significant enough that she didn't know if she could approach him. And if she did approach him, he could have killed her. And he doesn't kill her. Instead, he says, it ends up that he gives her enormous territories and power. But what was happening there? Like, it's more of a sparse text there. And the sages have great things to say, but that's a complicated story for us to wrap our heads around. And I think it was meant to be. I think that all of that was these two different worlds, this Benjaminite and this Babylonian king. And it's like they're working out, right? You have Gomer. Like, that's really complicated. Hosea and Gomer, go marry this prostitute so you can understand me. I mean, right? Isn't that complicated? This whole thing is not something we really understand in the way we think we understand it. Let's look here. Moses marries the Cushite woman. And he had left his first wife and he had had a son with her and left. That's complicated because Israel was delivered, but he had to leave her. And then he marries another woman. He had divorced her, but right? And that's where Miriam is speaking out. Like, why are you, what? And that's another whole teaching, Miriam's Dilemma. You can go and check that out. And then we get to where we are talking about Isaac. Now, who is Isaac's brother but Ishmael? So, who is Ishmael's mother but Hagar? Now, Abraham, because of Sarah, sends out Ishmael and his mother Hagar to the wilderness. And she doesn't even want to watch her baby just dry up and starve to death. So she puts him aside and walks away. But the father hears her cries and sends her nourishment for her child because he loves her. So you have this complex relationship between Sarah and Hagar, right? They're sister wives. And that's a complexity most of us don't understand these days. But these brothers were both blessed and are both the seed of Abraham, right? The nations, they each have nations, and were blessed and loved, and was very complicated. And the sages believe there's all kinds of things you can read about these brothers, and it's not as bad as it might sound. But diametrically opposed households within the same house. And that's sort of the way we are now in our nation right now, because you have about half the people believing, this person should be in charge and that everybody should just stop worrying about the way it happened. And these other people believe this person's in charge and that the whole country has been disenfranchised from a free election, so that everybody could have closure, and they want to pursue that, which they have every right to. And what does unity look like? Okay, so everybody has their idea of what unity looks like. Some people say unity is dropping it even if it was done wrong. I don't think that people find true unity doing that. I think unity is found in the proper Torah scales and fairness of how something's done and adjudicated. And then, no matter what that looks like, people have unity under the banner of open, transparent truth. But if we think about Solomon and his wisdom, where the true mother is really just not going to want the baby to be torn apart. And that doesn't even work in this situation because everyone thinks that different things will tear this country apart. So it's complicated. So on a national basis, we need to let the people who do the national things do what they do and figure it out in our court system. But we as people, as neighbors, as daughters, as sons, as friends, as whatever, coworkers, what we can control is our own immediate world. We can control our attitude. We can control our kindness. It is going to be very easy to trigger people. Don't do it. Just, you know what? And I'm not saying I'm innocent. I mean, I've had my own humorous little things I've done because I do try to make light a little bit sometimes of things when things are just dire and seems like it's like a travesty. And that might bother some people. And some people think it's funny, and that's fine. I mean, different strokes for different folks, I guess. But the bigger thing here is going to be in your sphere of influence with the people that you love and care about that might believe so differently from you. Maybe you can't have a national impact because this is left up to the leaders. But you impact your day and your minute and your hour and your neighbor. And God loves Isaac and God loves Ishmael, okay? And how things pan out are how things pan out. If we can remove ourselves from things we cannot control because we can't, no matter how much we gripe about it, we're not going to influence anything. No matter how much we tweet or post or complain or whatever, it doesn't change anything. It can be a cry from the pain we're in, and each side has their own pain, right? They have their own pain. They're hurting. People are hurting, genuinely. People have different beliefs of things that they think are important. And a lot of people come by, I think, a lot of people who come by beliefs that are different from mine come by them honestly and have their own reasons. I might not agree with their ideology, but I might not question their morals because we want the same things ultimately. But we have very different beliefs about very important topics. But at the same time, if one of the main tenets of the Bible is that this northern and southern kingdom of the Bible come together, maybe we, people on Pine Street and in Pearl Street, maybe they can still be friends too, right? These bigger, huge reconciliations, we want those, but we can't even have tiny little reconciliations. So if your neighbor believes a different thing, you know what we need to do is not make everything so hard for our neighbor. I'm the first person to tell you I'm speaking to me. So do not think I'm preaching to you. I'm preaching to myself, and you happen to be in earshot, eavesdropping on my own self-lecture. But if I might have had a quote. Let me see if I have a quote here. Let me see if I do. Let's see. Well, I guess I don't have a quote. I thought I had a quote about Keturah, which is actually Hagar, who after Sarah dies, he actually marries her. Well, some people don't believe that that's Hagar. I do. I do believe it, that she is. And gave her a place of honor. And I think that right now, being the Torah portion, during this catastrophic, I mean, to me, it feels that way. Emotions are flying everywhere. It's emotionally catastrophic, I think. Doesn't mean needs to end that way or stay that way. But it means the people of God need to be the people interjecting the love so that doesn't happen. And so that picture of these two different brothers with these two different mothers, right? She actually marries Ishmael off to an Egyptian woman, right? I mean, these are different systems. But they both were fathered by Abraham and loved by God. And it's an enormous challenge for us to understand that, because we are so programmed to just see a hero and a villain. And I'm not saying I'm not guilty of that, but because we do believe what we believe, deeply held beliefs. And it's easy to fall off the fall off the boat into this stormy water, in this stormy sea. But I think we'd be better served if we could talk with your friends with whom you're in agreement to deal with your pain. But the people on the other side, pause a little on that, because someone's going to hurt, some groups, a whole half of the country is going to be hurt. And gloating is not good. Now, did David walk to Jerusalem with a head in his hand and the sword of Goliath and gloat? Yes. Okay. See, that's complicated, but you're not King David. Okay. But you're important, but you're you. You're not called to lead a nation. You're called to be a nation. Being a nation and leading a nation are very different callings. Being a divided nation is inevitable to some degree when people have divergent beliefs, particularly on, the sanctity of infant life and all these things. I embrace you in that struggle. And I know that that's hard. It's hard for me. It's hard. Okay. I know. But the Bible gives us his examples of these complicated relationships with ledgers that don't seem to balance out, and abacuses that are tipped and tilted, and our beliefs are challenged, and but we're not called to conformity into, a square peg and a round hole. We're not supposed to just have a square peg and a square hole. We're going to have round holes and square pegs until the world to come, when Yeshua says, here's the new shape. Do you agree? Let me see if anyone's chatting. Barb, yes, we are excellent brothers first and foremost. Yes, excellent. Yes, Barbara. Yes, Barbara, that's right. Now, different people will have a different idea of what unity is. Personally, I think unity is going to be that we would find peace before there's a conclusion. For the broader picture of, let's say your group loses because fraud was proven. Then maybe you lost this battle, but you won the war of the nation being legal and fair. So that would be my perspective. And I would not arrive at that meanly toward anybody else. But some people would see it differently. They would have a different set of values. They wouldn't, the scales of balance or of justice, that's not as important to them. They want whatever they think is important going up. Okay, so I can't even say we all know what unity is. I think that's what unity is, and I would strive for us to be in that sort of unity. And that would include where if they can't prove, and the courts, whatever, then it's very important that we would respect whatever that outcome would be. Now, someone's not going to be happy either way, okay? But believers, no matter what happens, we need to make this easy on our neighbor. Whether your side wins, make it easy on your neighbor. If you don't win, I would hope your neighbor would make it easy on you. But if they won't and you're the believer, even make that easy on them. Just try not to get in the fray of it. Show up by not showing up when you're really, really upset. So a lot of people, I tell this to people when they first learn about Torah and they're upset because they have some misgivings about Christmas or whatever. And I was trying not to get into that argument with people at all. But I do tell people, if you've discovered something that you feel like is disturbing you about something, until you're not mad about it anymore, just don't even talk about it. Because hate transforms opinion into a ledger, a list and a ledger. It is no longer like a human interaction. It's all a ledger. It's completely disconnected from that human experience of being communicated. Hate will do that. So I would pray that your motive is not hate, that it's about restitution, it's about resolution, it's about restoration. And it's not easy. It is not easy for me at all. If I feel like I'm going to show up as a smarty pants, I got to pause. I have to. That's like, I'm not good enough. I'm not, disciplined enough not to sometimes. So know your limits and remember that your neighbor that might have a totally different belief system, has a heart too, is loved by the Father too. And it's really not your job to teach everybody else a lesson. I just want to know, it's not mine. So we got to get out of that. We're ahead of this nation. We're in charge of this nation. You are in charge by your vote. And if that's being discredited or thrown away or fraudulently messed with, yes, we have every need to fix that so that a proper allocation is done of power where it needs to be. But that doesn't mean that's patriotism and not partisan, even though it would be one party against another. So you see, we're wading into David and Saul. This is Esther and her marriage. This is Moses marrying the Cushite woman. This is Ishmael and Isaac. This is Sarah and Hagar and Abraham and Hagar. That's what this is. This is all about the Bible and the way people are and the pain they go through and the complicated measures it takes to get along. And even in your own family, people are afraid, like, what if this is arguments, or arguments are breaking out in their family? Sometimes we just need to step back and not say anything. Sometimes you read the Bible and it seems like she hammered a tent peg through his head and that was good. And you just kind of don't say anything because you're like, it doesn't, well, you know what? Maybe do that now. Look at this as the tent peg through the head. If it seems right, and just go against your full flesh nature to just get all totally responsive. That doesn't mean condone corruption or submit to things that you think are horrible. It just means value your relationships enough to try to be in a constant state of repair, if you can, the best that you can. And you're not God and you can't do it all. But somehow in this complexity, we can do it. There is a way to just be like, we disagree, but let's love each other. And let's just see how this plays out. Let's just calm down and just rest in the peace that our Father says, I am one. And me being one is so amazing that I can give you the strength to be one too, even in the complexity of all of these relationships and how different they are. I hope this is an encouraging word to you. It doesn't feel like in any way a rebuke, because I have no rebuke for anybody who is just traumatized because they feel like something bad is happening in this nation against our Father. I respect where you come from. It's because you love the Father. Is make sure that our goals are always loving him and not so much hating these people. Okay, just wanted to mention that. Hi, Bruce. Bruce Scott says, could the 10 camels represent the 10 commandments? Yes, and it's water, but living water, right? Stored. Absolutely. They bowed down to the bride and served them Torah, love until they were fulfilled. I love this story. I'm so glad. Bruce, you need to come every week and say something, because that is exactly what I think. And I think what's interesting is in the water being that life-giving Torah, that life-giving water, that where you'll never thirst again. Yeshua, where you never thirst again. I will give you that water. And the second matriarch in this complicated situation where Hagar and Sarah, but she's dead. And now you have the water, and the second matriarch fills up all the camels. So it's kind of like, can we do that? Can we be like Rebecca and fill up all the camels with the life water to travel back because the master says so? That's kind of, the Bible is never short on metaphors and spiritual pictures and shadows of how to live and how it can be done. And somehow, even though you don't think it's okay, it is somehow okay. Salvation all over the pages. Amen. Yes. Barbara likes your thoughts too. Yeah, that's right. That's exactly right. I mean, that's what I think. I think these are just themes that we wrestle with in our humanity. And we are watching extraordinary things happen during very extraordinary times. Everybody has got COVID fatigue and exhaustion, and just we miss each other. We miss our lifestyle. We feel out of joint. We don't know what to do. The markets are up and down. I mean, everything is just so difficult. And there's all these things going on in our country that make us uncomfortable. And so anyway, I want this to be a word of encouragement to you. I don't want this to be a word of rebuke or whatever. What I want to do is water your camels, right? Because we have a journey to go because the master says so. But he sent his right-hand man to get his bride. And I'll tell you what, that's the Holy Spirit. And you are greater is he who is in you than he who is roaming this earth, destroying it. We have more love in us than you can imagine. And don't be afraid to love, because love covers a multitude of sins. And so don't hate the sin more than you love the sinner. And I don't even know who the sinner is. I'm not saying I'm telling you sinners. I'm not trying to use this emphatic language. And, it's sometimes even when we talk about it, we can be insulting and not mean to. So I even want to try to not do that. Because if you're watching and you probably have maybe you have a different belief system than I do, and it's probably obvious what mine is. I would hope it is, because I wouldn't want to be, like I'm running for Congress, so I could appeal to everybody. But if you're watching, we're friends because we're going to figure this thing out. God's going to figure this thing out. I don't know how, to be honest, but it will be an entertaining journey, but maybe not in the best way. But we're going to watch, and we're going to pray, and we're going to bless our neighbor. We're going to bless every speck of light of God that's in each person, and bless that. And just bless that, so that it rises up in that good, wholesome, watered camels are coming. When we get still in the field and we lift our eyes, and the camels are coming full of water. That's what I want for us. That's what I need. Do you need it? I need 10 camels like now. I wish it's dark. I wouldn't be able to see them. But then again, wouldn't I? Anybody else have any comments here? I guess we are just running out of time here. But I have definitely so appreciated you being here and just having this time with you and being able to talk about complicated things. And that's what we do on this program. We try to create safety around the hardest conversations and make it okay, because we can do this. And so I encourage you to be comforted in this day. Drink the water, enjoy it. Enjoy. This is the day the Lord has made. We will rejoice in this day. We'll be glad. So whatever the day brings, my mentor, Dr. Aylwine, says this: whatever the day brings, it might not be something you think is good, but it is empirically good. It's emphatically good, because this is the day the Lord has made, and he makes nothing that isn't good. That's comforting. Don't you love that? That's my favorite part of being alive, knowing that I'm not in control. So remember that the future begins now. I have enjoyed this time with you. And if you tune in next week, I'm sure we'll have another who knows what next week will be, but just tune in. All right. Bye-bye.
We are richly blessed to bring you what we believe is the fullest, most diverse, yet up-to-date progressive teachings, discussion, and prayer programming you can find anywhere on this planet. Be sure to take the tour of the MessianicLambRadio.com website. I'm Susan Hoogie, thanking you for joining us on the Messianic Lamb Video Network.